I spent 22 years being invisible in my own life, until one quiet evening, a single touch from the wrong person reminded me I still existed, and once that spark ignited, it set fire to everything I thought was unbreakable. Dana had always thought of herself as a loyal woman. For 22 years, she had been Paul's wife, navigating the winding routines of marriage with grace and quiet resignation. Their lives had settled into a predictable rhythm, one that hummed with the faint buzz of appliances and the soft echoes of their children's laughter, now grown and scattered into their own lives. The house had become too quiet, but Dana had learned to live within the silence. It was a safe place, predictable and uneventful, until Tyler was not supposed to be anything more than her best friend's son. She remembered the first time she met him, a shy boy hiding behind his mother's legs, clutching a juice box with both hands. Over the years, he had become a fixture in their home, his presence as familiar as the creak in the hallway floorboards. She watched him grow from a lanky teenager into a man whose quiet confidence filled every room he entered. There had been a subtle shift in the way he looked at her, an unspoken awareness that neither dared to address. The evening that changed everything started like any other. Paul had taken his pills and retreated to their bedroom, leaving Dana to tidy up the remnants of dinner. Tyler lingered, offering to help with the dishes, his sleeves rolled up, hands submerged in soapy water. She noticed the way his forearm muscles flexed, how his laugh lines deepened when he smiled. The casual conversation slipped into a comfortable silence as they moved to the living room, the glow of an old black and white movie casting long shadows across the walls. Dana sat beside him, her body angled away in a subconscious effort to maintain boundaries that were already beginning to blur. The proximity was innocent, at least on the surface, but the air felt charged, every breath shallow and aware. When his knee brushed hers, it was a collision of worlds she had carefully kept apart. She didn't move away. That simple act was the first crack in the dam. His hand found hers with an accidental grace, a slip that wasn't entirely accidental. The contact was fleeting, a mere brush of fingers, but it set her pulse racing. Tyler's hand remained open and waiting, resting with an unspoken invitation. The blanket in her lap became an anchor as she gripped it tightly, her eyes fixed on the television but seeing nothing of the movie. His whisper cut through the haze. "You okay?" She nodded, not trusting her voice, not trusting herself. Moment became a quiet rebellion against the life she had resigned herself to. His hand rested gently on her thigh, a touch that acknowledged every unmet need, every silenced desire. There was no urgency in his movements, only a deliberate tenderness that unraveled her defenses one breath at a time. She felt the shift within her. A woman remembered, a pulse reawakened. Edler's thumb traced a path along her skin, a stroke that spoke louder than words. Dana's body betrayed her with every shallow breath, her thighs pressing together as though trying to contain the wildfire spreading through her veins. When he whispered that he would stop if she wanted, she found herself unable to form the lie. She didn't want him to stop. Their kiss was inevitable, a collision of need and neglect that had been building for far too long. It was gentle at first, a tentative exploration, but quickly deepened into something raw and consuming. Tyler's hands were reverent, mapping the contours of her body with a familiarity that felt both new and long-awaited. The couch became their confessional, the flickering television their only witness as they surrendered to the moment. A creak down the hall froze them in place, a stark reminder of the world they were betraying. Tyler's forehead pressed against hers, a silent acknowledgement of the line they had crossed. "We're not supposed to be doing this," he whispered, his breath warm against her lips. "I know." But the kiss that followed was filled with the acceptance of what had already begun. The night ended in tangled silence, their bodies spent yet wired with the electricity of what had transpired. Dana watched him as the credits rolled, her mind swirling with questions she wasn't ready to ask. What happens now? She dared to whisper. Tyler had no answers. Neither did she. Morning light was unkind. The house felt smaller, the walls closer, every sound amplified. Dana stood in the kitchen, her coffee untouched, as Tyler moved through the space with a deliberate casualness. Their eyes didn't meet, but the air vibrated with the weight of the unspekendies past in a blur of avoidance. The living room became forbidden territory. Dana found refuge in mundane chores, scrubbing surfaces that had no dirt, folding laundry with mechanical precision. But the memory of his touch lingered, a ghost that haunted every idle moment. When they crossed paths in the laundry room, their hands brushed over a basket, and the charged stillness read her. Nettie can't stop thinking about it, he confessed, his voice a low confession that echoed in her chest. Me neither, she admitted, the simplicity of the truth slicing through the denial they had both clung to. The acknowledgement didn't change anything, but it stripped away the pretense that they could return to before avoidance became exhausting. They found themselves drawn to quiet corners, stolen moments of proximity where words were unnecessary. One evening, they sat on the porch steps, the sunset painting the sky in hues that felt almost mocking in their beauty. Tyler sat at a distance, close enough to be felt, far enough to be respectable. "You're quiet lately," he observed, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I've been thinking." "Me too." Dana's response was almost a whisper, the words laced with the weight of everything unsaid. "I should never have let it happen." "But you did, and I didn't stop you." The truth hung between them, a fragile thread neither dared to sever. When Tyler stood and walked into the dusk, Dana didn't follow. She watched as his silhouette faded into the shadows, a quiet resignation settling over her. Inside, Paul was washing dishes, humming a tune that had long lost its melody. Dana stood in the doorway, wine glass in hand, her silence answering his casual inquiry. "You okay?" She nodded, the lie tasting bitter on her tongue. The worst part wasn't that it had happened. The worst part was that she wanted it to happen. Against. Days blurred into weeks, but the tension remained sharp as a blade. Dana found herself caught in a loop, going through the motions of a life that had become increasingly difficult to inhabit. Paul's obliviousness was both a relief and a wound. He moved through their shared routines with the same mechanical predictability, never once noticing how she flinched when Tyler's name was mentioned or how her hands trembled slightly when folding laundry that smelled faintly of his cologne. Tyler had stopped coming by as often, but his absence was louder than his presence. Each time the front door remained shut, Dana felt both grateful and abandoned. She knew avoiding him was the right thing, yet every night she stood at the kitchen window, staring into the street as if he might appear. The internal war between guilt and desire consumed her. On Thursday afternoon, a text appeared on her phone. It was Tyler. He asked if she was free. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. Every rational fiber in her body screamed to ignore it, but the craving for that spark, that acknowledgement of her existence, was too powerful. She told him to meet her at a small cafe on the edge of town. Far from familiar, Ice Cafe was quiet, the hum of conversations blending into the background noise of clinking cups and soft jazz. Tyler was already there when she arrived, seated in a corner booth, his fingers drumming nervously against the table. Seeing him was a punch to the chest. The air between them was thick with all the things they had left unsaid. "You look tired," he said, his eyes scanning her face with concern. "I haven't been sleeping well." "Me neither." Their conversation was polite at first, but the weight of their last encounter loomed heavily. When their fingers accidentally brushed while reaching for the sugar, Dana felt that familiar jolt. "We need to talk," she said, though the words felt inadequate. Tyler leaned in, his voice dropping low. I think about you all the time. I try to stop, but I can't. Dana's defenses crumbled under the sincerity in his eyes. She confessed that every room in her house reminded her of him now, that silence had become suffocating, and that the part of her that wanted him was louder than her guilt. They left the cafe without finishing their drinks. The ride to Tyler's apartment was quiet, each lost in their turmoil. The apartment was small, sparse, but it felt like a sanctuary. The moment the door shut behind them, the tension snapped. They fell into each other with a desperation that was no longer hesitant. This wasn't a stolen moment on a living room couch. This was a choice. In the aftermath, Dana lay beside him, staring at the ceiling. This changes everything, she murmured. It already has. Tyler's hand found hers, lacing their fingers together. They knew they were teetering on the edge of something irreversible. Yet neither wanted to pull back, but reality had sharp edges. The following days were filled with stolen glances and near misses. Paul remained oblivious, but Dana's best friend, Tyler's mother, began to notice the cracks. She asked pointed questions, her eyes narrowing as Dana offered half-hearted reassurances. The weight of the secret grew heavier on evening. As Dana stood in the grocery store aisle, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number flashed. On the screen, "Does Paul know where you were last night?" Her blood ran cold. Someone knew. Panic gripped her as she scanned the aisles, half expecting to see accusing eyes watching her. Messages continued over the next few days, vague threats that hinted at exposure. Tyler insisted they should come clean, face the consequences together, but Dana was paralyzed by fear. She couldn't risk losing everything she had built, even if it had become a gilded Khajiit. Confrontation came unexpectedly. Paul found her phone on the kitchen counter, the screen illuminated with a new message. His expression shifted from confusion to devastation as the truth unfolded in painful clarity. The betrayal cut deep, not with shouting or violence, but with a silence so profound it left Dana breathless. Paul left that night. He didn't take his belongings, just his keys and the ghost of the life they had shared. Dana sat on the living room couch, the same place where it had all begun, staring at the blank television screen. Tyler came over, but his presence couldn't fill the void. They sat in silence, the weight of their choices pressing down. "What happens now?" she asked again. This time, Tyler had an answer. "We start over together." But Dana wasn't sure if starting over was possible when the foundation was built on ashes. Weeks turned into months. The scandal faded from whispers to silence, but the damage remained. Dana found herself in a small apartment, far from the house that had once been her prison. Tyler was by her side, but the dynamics had shifted. The thrill of secrecy had been replaced with the reality of consequence. An evening, as they sat on the fire escape, watching the city lights blur into the night, Tyler took her hand. "Do you regret it?" he asked. Dana looked at him, really looked, and found no easy answer. "I regret how it happened, but not that it did." Tyler nodded, his thumb brushing over her necklace. In the end, the story wasn't about betrayal or scandal. It was about a woman who dared to want more, who stepped outside the lines of a life that had forgotten how to see her. The cost had been steep, but in that quiet moment, as the city hummed around them, Dana realized that wanting to be seen wasn't a crime. It was survival. Suspense didn't come from what had happened. It came from what would happen next, in the uncharted territory of a life rewritten by choice rather than circumstance.